The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're coming to you live from the Warner Center in Woodland Hills, California. This is the home for the Center for Autism. It is also the home for Autism Live. And we are thrilled to be here with you. We're going to be live with you for the next 2 hours. Now, I have to give you a little bit of a programming note. This is, I think, the last time that we're going to do a regular show that is 2 hours in length live. There will be special episodes that we will go live and stay live longer, but it's the last time I think that we're going to do a 2-hour format. Over the years, and we are coming up on, if I'm not mistaken, our 8th anniversary of doing this show. I know. Over the years, we've done this in different ways. When we first started, which was actually technically longer than 8 years ago, because when we first started, the show was titled something else. It was called Skills Live. And we were doing 4 hours a day live, 5 days a week. And you can imagine why, with just little old me, and very few guests, can I tell you, it's just la, 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 of my mouth. And then over the years, we've changed the format, but I think we finally arrived at what it should be, because it makes sense. We're going to be Monday through Friday, 1 hour. Isn't that going to be great? It's just going to be like everything else that you watch on TV, like Rachel Ray. Like Ellen. So it's just going to sort of make sense, and you can watch us in podcasts, whatever. So this is sort of monumental that this is the last, and on the anniversary of us being 8 years old. But we're excited because we are going to be here live for the next 2 hours, and we've got a big, big show, as Ed Sullivan would say. Very excited. Now, there are a couple of things that I need to let you know. As always, we want this to be a two-way or million-way conversation. We love to hear from you guys. So Traven is going to show you some of the different ways that you can get a hold of us and some of the different ways that you can participate. While he does that, I want to remind you that our homepage is autism-live.com. When you go there, it's a brand new website, and I think you'll like it, but we'd love to have your feedback. Our developers are asking, so what's the feedback on it? And we've had different feedback from different people asking, hey, where'd you put this? Right? Where'd you hide that? Or things that you want to see more of or less of. So feel free to look around and poke around on those pages and see what you like and what you don't like. Our goal was to give you as many ways to find information as possible, as many different ways to search, to find answers to the questions that you had. So look at the website and see if it feels that way or if it feels more overwhelming. So, because that would be helpful information for us. Two things I want to point out on the new website. When we're live, it says at the top of the page live with a red dot. You click on it. Well, some search engines will automatically pop it up live. Others, you have to click on it, and then it will show you the live show. That's the international symbol for it. Will show you the live show. But the chat is down at the bottom of the page now, and you do have to click on that. Doesn't matter which search engine you're on. You click on it, it opens up, and then you type and hit enter, and then it comes. I'm looking at that screen right now. And I really like that it gives me a timestamp of when you sent it so that I know if you sent it in the middle of the night, right? But I don't know what you were watching when you clicked it. So do still continue to reference. Don't just use pronouns. Don't say, well, when she said this, tell me who you're talking about, she, right? And you can describe people. I love to be a detective and figure things out, but give me as many clues as possible because I'm not a good detective, right? Okay, so that's the live feature, and I want to say that that's free. It's anonymous, but of course we love to check in with you guys on Facebook and YouTube, and see what you guys have to say. We love the participation with you. We think that that's a super fun aspect. It's very reinforcing, if you will, for us. Now, I do like to start Thursday's show by reminding you that we have lots of experts that will be on the show, and we'll talk about who's on the show today. It's going to be awesome. But I do like to always remind you that I'm not one of the experts. I'm just somebody who coughs on air. No, I'm a very proud autism mom, and I'm a former teacher, and former teacher, once a teacher, always a teacher. So I love the whole idea of educating, and I think that knowledge is power. And I know what it was like for me in the early days when my son was diagnosed, that I felt alone, and I didn't know where to go for answers, and I couldn't afford to go the places that I could find. So when we started this, there were a couple of things that were really important to me, and one was that it be free. One was that it would be available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, even when we're not live, and that both of those things are true. That you could ask a question with no fear of recrimination, so that you had the ability to be anonymous. That is still true. There are other ways that you can ask, that if that isn't part of what you have going on, you can ask on Facebook and be open about that. But if you want to ask anonymously, you can do it on the chat site. All those things were important. And then the other thing that I wanted was for every opportunity for people to come to the show from any walk of life, from any place in the autism community, whether it be a parent, a teacher, a practitioner, a person on the spectrum, to come here and to feel as if they belonged and that they aren't alone. Because you know what I always say, si se puede, right? We hold hands, we do this together, right? That's what's important to me. But am I the expert? Nah. Not an expert in autism, been covering it for over 10 years. Been an autism parent now, oh my gosh, for 13 years. And I'm excited about what I have seen happen in our lives and in other people's lives when they get access to the things that help them. So that's what I want to help you to do. So don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to reach out, right? Love and hugs to everybody. You are not alone. I know it feels like it, but people are thinking about you that you don't even know. Isn't that a very interesting thought to have, to know that? I always say you don't know how many people's arms you're in, and you're in a lot of people's arms. I hope you feel that today. Feel it, feel it, feel it. Okay, so the other thing that we like to do on Thursdays is we like to start the show with something that we fondly refer to as the jargon of the day. We do this for a very specific reason, because the jargon can be super intensive, and if you're not careful, it can sink your battleship. So we take on one word, one phrase, one acronym a day on Thursdays, and we give you the actual definition, which often I like to make fun of, just being honest, because sometimes they're ridiculous and so convoluted that, it's crazy. And then we give you a working definition, which often makes the experts break out into hives. And I have to admit that I kind of enjoy that as well. But I try to give it to you in a context that you can begin to understand it. Sometimes you won't. And I don't want you to feel frustrated if you're like, yeah, I didn't get that. Because the truth is that sometimes, just like our kiddos, we need opportunities to learn it again and again and again, and somewhere down the road it will click for you, because I'll tell you what will happen. At some point you'll see it in your life and you go, oh, that's that thing. That's what they were talking about for that, and it'll all start to cohese and make sense, right? And while I'm talking about this, I just want to say that we had a question that came in last Thursday when I was not here. Somebody said, where can I look for the best help in passing the RBT exam? I was just notified after only a short time that due to insurance reasons, I must pass the exam ASAP, and I'm desperate for resources to help me prepare. I've been practicing ABA since May of 2018 and have 28 years of experience in early childhood to include special needs. However, I am not a good test taker. Any help would be greatly appreciated, and thank you so much for the wonderful information. And they sent their address. I will send this off to them as well, but I'm going to say this for everybody. RBT stands for Registered Behavior Technician, and most insurance won't cover a behavioral therapist unless they are a RBT or a BCAT, which is a board-certified autism technician. So this person wants to take their RBT, which is a great place to start. I want to tell you a couple of resources really quickly. IBT, Institute for Behavioral Training, has a whole training. It's a 40-hour training, which I know that sounds like a lot, but the truth is you could really bang that out in a weekend if you wanted to do it intensively, and it has practice quizzes to see that you're getting it. But the other thing that whenever I go someplace and speak, all the RBTs and BCBAs and BCATs come up to me, and the one thing that they say is, I watched your jargon of the day and it helped me pass my test. This is what they tell me. So we have a whole playlist on YouTube that is these jargons of the day, and it will help you to know the terms because we explain it really easily. So check us out on YouTube. There's a playlist that is just our jargon of the day. I'm very proud that it's been able to help people. So we have not revealed what today's term is. Are you ready? It's one of the two of my most favorite to give me a headache. Here it is, DRO. I see that and I go, take a breath. Okay, so not last week, but 2 weeks ago, we did DRA. And if you didn't see that, go back, look at the playlist and see DRA. But now we're going to talk about DRO. And these two get confused very easily. But if you can know the differences, I guarantee you there's going to be something on a test about this, right? Okay, so DRO, what does it stand for? Let's take a look at our actual definition. DRO stands for differential reinforcement of other behaviors. And you see in quotes there, omission therapy. Reinforcement is given as long as the targeted inappropriate behavior does not occur. I just want to refresh your memory that DRA, which is very close, stood for differential reinforcement of, and of course now I've drawn a complete senior blank. I'm going to find that out for you in just a second here. But DRO is other, and it's not additional. I can't even think what it is. But the difference is, well, let's go to our working definition. I'm getting really ahead of myself. Let's look at what DRO is. So it's giving a reward when the behavior isn't happening, and if the behavior happens, the reinforcement or reward to access to the reinforcement, it stops. So when you're doing DRA, it's a targeted thing. We've looked at it and we've said the function of the behavior is this, and we're going to give them another way of getting their needs met. That's DRA. So we've said, okay, they're spitting on their hands and they're going like this with the spit on their desk, and that gets in the way of everything. DRA would say, all right, so there's something tactile about this that's happening, and the part that we don't like is that it's spit, and that that can be have cold germs and things like that in it. So we don't want that. So we're going to find something that gives the need for this without having it be this. That's DRA. So we might give that kiddo Play-Doh because it's going to fill the same need, hopefully, if it's a sensory thing. And so that's how we're going to intervene with that. And we're going to reinforce him for using this other thing, and it's going to make it so that he's getting his needs met, right? DRO is when the two things don't have to be related at all. But we don't want to see a certain behavior, like maybe the behavior that the child does is like they're coughing constantly, and they don't need to, right? It's just a thing that they do, that they like that over and over and over again. And it's getting in the way of them having other people play with them. It's getting in the way of them speaking. It's getting in the way of them singing, whatever it is that we're doing in the classroom or at home, right? So we want to reinforce everything else. So we're going to find other things for the child to do, and anytime that they're doing a class of things that are not that coughing, we're going to reinforce it, right? But once the coughing happens, then the reinforcement goes away, or the access to the reinforcement goes away. So it's a difference in how you're trying to fulfill the need of having this behavior diminish or go away. So in DRA, it's very targeted, that you're going to look at what the function of the behavior is, and you're find alternative. That's what it is. Thank you. The brain is a crazy thing, right? Differential reinforcement of alternative behavior. So you're picking something that will fill the function, and you're having that happen, and when that happens, you're reinforcing it, right? because we want to get that function met. It's like a replacement behavior, right? But for DRO, we're saying we're not going to talk to them about that behavior, but we're going to reinforce everything that is not that behavior. But when the behavior happens, the reinforcement goes away. Does that make sense? So that's DRA and DRO. Very confusing concepts. But if you can know and understand what those are, the thing about it is if you do ABA, you already understand it. It's just that the terms, I think, hurts everybody's head, and they're on tests all the time. So DRA, DRO, these are methods of changing behavior. It's just different tactics to be able to change behavior so that a person can be more productive. And very, very useful terms. Okay, moving on. We always have a question of the day. And our question today to you, and you can be answering on Facebook or YouTube or write into us on the live feature, which I am watching. So our question today is, name one thing that you can change today that would make your life better. You know, so often we get used to doing things a certain way. And even if it's not perfect, or even if it's like really not productive, we get used to doing it that way because it's the way we're doing things, right? We've gotten into a rut and we just persist. Because often something, you know, in order to change a behavior, especially for adults, things have to get really inconvenient, right? To the point where we go, I can't do it anymore. And then we change. But sometimes subtle little shifts, just one thing that you could do. I know, talking to moms, that we are so good at so many things, but taking care of ourselves and making sure that we get what we need is often the last thing on the list. Like, I would never send my child off to school without making sure that he had something to drink with him. That he has something to drink in his lunch, and he also has a water bottle because he runs during his PE thing. And I would never send him off to school without water. But frequently, I will leave the house and not bring water with me because I'm not thinking about my needs and I'm not thinking ahead. And I know other women who, I'm guilty of this too. We don't get enough sleep, right? Because we're meeting everybody else's needs. And for me, part of it is that I'm dog tired at night. But staying up after my husband and my son go to bed is sometimes the only me time there is. You know what I'm saying? So I will deprive myself of sleep in order to have my me time. But you know, if I just were to look at my life and go, what would be the one thing that would change my life? I think it was 3 weeks ago that I came in here on a Thursday and I said, I had 9.5 hours sleep and I'm a different person. Like, I remember what my name is and I know how to use my car keys and I don't even know what to do with myself because I have so much energy. So for me, if there was one thing that I could change today, and I can, it's getting to bed earlier so that I can actually have the opportunity to get more sleep. It's a matter of committing to it and saying, you know, anchoring it in my head and saying, here's why this is better. But we can all look at our lives and go, all right, I don't have to change everything. But if I could change one thing, what's the one thing that you guys could change today? I'm not saying that you need to or that you have to, but just to acknowledge, oh, I have control over that. If I wanted to change that, I could. And how would my life be better? I'm always amazed by, especially young people who are very good at taking care of themselves. My mom was superlative too, that I can always remember when my mom got ready to do the taxes, she would lay out all of these things on the dining room table and she would get all her piles in a row. She would have her favorite little snack. She would have a big thing of her favorite drink. She would have it all laid out so that she had a reinforcement while she was doing the taxes. I don't think to do that. My motto is always muscle through it, you know. But I don't have to do that, and you don't have to do that either. So what would you change to make your life better? Is it a self-care thing or is it something else? I think for a lot of moms, there's a lot of self-care that we could right? That we could focus on. In any case, we're going to talk a little bit more about that later on. And then we always have a topic of the day. So let's take a look at what our topic actually of the week is. What is it this week? Dun, 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 dun. Here it comes. Okay. Strength over time equals power. This is an equation that I've heard since I was probably 14 years old. And what's interesting about it is that the first time it was spoken to me, somebody said it and they said, well, strength over time equals power. And I said, what does that mean? And the first example that I was told is, well, the Grand Canyon. The Grand Canyon was created because a drop of water, which doesn't seem like a really powerful tool, but a drop of water continued over such a period of time that it created the Grand Canyon. So that really is strength, because it's strength over time, which equals power. And that this person was explaining to me that if you really want to be successful at anything, we all think it's these big sweeping things that we do, but often it's actually being able to maintain something over a long period of time that creates success. Now, why am I bringing this up? And by the way, some people literally put it as an equation, strength, and they do it like a fraction over time equals power. You can do it any way that you want to. But the fact of the matter is that it's true. Strength over time equals power. So let's look at this as the example when using ABA. ABA, Applied Behavior Analysis, is considered the gold standard of treatment for autism. But what I see a lot right now, and the number one thing I find myself talking to new parents about, is that it's something that's a big time commitment, especially in the beginning. That the whole purpose of ABA is to catch a child up, to build the skills that that they're behind in, that they're deficit in, and then also to reduce challenging behaviors. So we're going to put skills up and challenging behaviors down. Often the challenging behaviors are there because the skills aren't there to be able to communicate their needs. So they go hand in hand. And you would never want to do just one of them. But a lot of people are going, I'll say to them, the question I've been asking for years, are you doing ABA? And the parents will say to me, yes. And I go, fabulous. How many hours are you doing? And they'll go, we're doing 5 a week. And I go, what? How old is your child? And they'll say 4. And then I start to sweat, right? Because all of the studies that have been done about ABA, there's not a single study that shows that would get you where you want to go. I'm not saying that it has absolutely no value whatsoever, right? Because it does. But if you really want to get someplace, strength over time equals power. It's like going to the gym. Man, I go to the gym once and I go, wow, I'm healthy and fit now. No, because you got to go to the gym over and over and over again, and I don't. But I took my son to ABA over and over and over again. And I can tell you that strength over time equals power with ABA. But you got to have enough of it, right? And you got to do it long enough. So do your full prescription, but also for the things that you want in your life. This isn't just about ABA, and it isn't just about the gym. What is it that you want to change? What is it that you want to do? Strength over time equals power. You got to be willing to put the time in and do it consistently. So that's, and I know a lot of athletes. We just were around a lot of marathon runners because we had the LA Marathon, and they have a phrase sometimes when they talk about training, and they say, they're referring to their heart rate, they're like, get it up and then keep it up. And so it's another way of looking at strength over time equals power. Look at your life and think about, what do you want and what have you not, which part of the equation hasn't happened? Have you had the strength and have you kept it over time? Because if you do, change gonna come, right? If you are missing one, it's not gonna happen, not power. All right, that's my talk on that for today. We're a little bit late already. We got a great guest for our expert that's going to be joining us in just a second, Gabriel Meyer. is going to be with us. And then we have special education attorney Bonnie Yates. And then we have the fabulous founder and president of the Autism Helper, Sasha Long, is going to be with us. So all of that plus a great deal more. So stick with us.
Hey, I'm Candace Cameron Bray.
Tom Bergeron.
You're watching Autism Live.
And you're watching Autism Live.
And you're watching Autism Live.
You're watching Autism Live.
Do you provide care services to someone with autism? Recently, more and more children are being diagnosed with the condition and getting the support they need as awareness grows. But what happens to these children as they grow up? It's estimated that over 500,000 youth with autism will turn 18 in the next decade, and they'll be faced with a very difficult reality. As children with autism grow up, their services start to disappear or become very difficult to access. Things like medical care, mental health counseling, vocational training, and more. All services that are still desperately needed. The loss of support that youth with autism face as they grow up is so severe that it's referred to in the autism community as falling off a cliff. Adults with autism need the same level of support they had as children to avoid falling off the services cliff. Introducing Skills Living, the web-based software designed specifically to help transitioning youth and adults with autism so they can avoid the cliff and instead fly to success. With Skills Living, help your learner with autism develop the skills they need in all the critical areas of adult life, including self-control, planning, and problem-solving, effective communication, performing life skill tasks for independent living, acquiring and maintaining employment or other meaningful activities, developing and maintaining social skills and relationships, accessing transportation and public services, and being safe. Skills Living includes a comprehensive assessment, a data collection mobile app, behavior intervention plan builder, and automatic progress reporting. It also provides a complete curriculum addressing 16 key areas spanning the entire range of functioning adulthood. Skills Living is easy to use and can be implemented by schools, parents, and autism service providers. Call or click today for your free demo and see how Skills Living can help your learner with autism avoid the cliff and instead reach their fullest potential. Skills Living. Wish, learn, become.
This is Logan Shepherd. At first glance, he looks like a typical American teenager. He plays in a band, loves hanging out with his friends, he doesn't like doing homework, and he's not really fond of broccoli. But Logan Shepherd is not your typical 14-year-old. Logan was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2. He was nonverbal, made no eye contact, and his parents were told to abandon all hope. Instead, his parents began an intensive intervention treatment. At its center was a quality ABA program known as the CARD method. This is Logan Shepherd now.
All I really want to say is, like, I'm kind of copying Martin Luther King. I kind of have a dream, like, that one day, like, I can just, like, inspire people and never give up. Because, like, that's what I want to do in life. Because if I can succeed, they can succeed. And I will succeed.
To follow Logan's musical journey, visit www.facebook.com/officialdrummerrock or @drummerrock on Instagram. For more information on the CARD method, visit www.centerforautism.com or call 800-345-CARD. Rock on, Logan.
Parent to parent, you might be asking yourself sometimes, why does my child have meltdowns? Well, the difference between tantrums and meltdowns, they're a part of typical development, but meltdowns are when things get a little bit more out of control, when even the child isn't sure what's entirely wrong. Generally with a meltdown, there's an environmental component. There's something else going on outside the child that's making the tantrum worse. It's really important that we start to be detectives and take notes and look around at the environment and start to figure out what are the things that happen every time your child has a meltdown. And lastly, it's important to get help. You really can't face these kinds of things effectively, completely on your own. Tantrums, they're a part of typical development, but don't accept meltdowns as something that just happens. Make sure you get help and support. You might be asking yourself if your child has autism.
Hard times lead to good choices. Many times you're going to find out that change is coming and it's not something that you like to see. Things sometimes just don't work. Sometimes you have to put your child in a new school. Sometimes you have to put them in a different classroom. Often you'll see this with perhaps special education versus regular education, or everyone's favorite, puberty. All bets are off then. However, these things happen when they need to happen. So making that hard choice is super, super scary. But when you open those doors to look at things that maybe you've never dreamed you would have to look at, you're going to find help that you never expected. There are a lot of people out there dealing with the same things that you are dealing with, and there is a level of help that you never even knew existed. So don't be afraid when it's time to look at the scary problems that you're having. When those things come up, when the aggression increases, when things are falling apart at home, when you're getting the calls from the schools, don't be afraid. Reach out. Find out what you need to do. You might need to look at new schools, new housing. You might need to access new levels of service. But I am telling you, you're going to see amazing things. There are children that, as they grow, do things with the help of others, very specialized support, that you never thought they could do. So once you do that and you meet the child where he or she is and you give them what they need, everybody can do better, and you're going to see amazing progress.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We love this new segment that we've got that's called Ask An Autism Expert. Joining us via a lot of different mechanical, technological things is Gabriel Meyer. And Gabe, we're so excited to have you on the show for the first time. Tell us a little bit about what your role is at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders.
Okay. Well, I'm excited to be on the show, Shannon. I currently am clinical lead manager for now a number of different centers. Previously, I worked at our Santa Clarita Center in California, and now one of the roles that I've taken on is, because our family moved to Wisconsin, I'm supporting offices in some of our high-growth regions in Virginia, Maryland, Louisiana, where maybe we don't have that clinical lead support in those offices, and we want to make sure that the supervisors there are getting the support that they need, that the families are getting the clinical quality oversight that they need, and just kind of troubleshooting any other issues that come up, working with the operations team and those that are there on the ground in those states.
What a wonderful, wonderful thing to do. So, Gabe, we have some questions that some of our listeners and viewers wrote in, and I'm going to ask you the first one. It's, how can I know, this is such a great question, how can I know when I should start potty training my son? He is 3 and nonverbal.
Yeah, there's a number of things that you need to consider at this point. Obviously, being 3 years old, the mom is kind of right to start looking towards potty training. The problem is that sometimes we want to make sure that the child has all the prerequisites necessary for potty training to begin. One of the big ones is going to be, can this individual or this child withhold their urine and their bowel movements for long enough? And so what you would need to do is you kind of need to make sure that you're tracking how often you're having to change the child, and usually you're looking for at least a couple of hours they need to be able to withhold. The other big factor here is that this child is nonverbal, which isn't necessarily a barrier to this child being successful with beginning the potty training process. The issue here would be, does the child have any sort of communicative skills? If they're on a PEG system or an augmentative communication system, then we might be able to get them to learn some of the indicative procedures that they need to follow. Maybe saying they need to go potty, or pressing a button on their iPad that indicates that they need to go. One of the areas you could start with this is just getting them to identify wet versus dry. It could be really helpful, so that way they can discriminate between those two things. But ultimately there's just a few of those prerequisites that we need to try, and then if your child meets that criteria, and even the communication part of it doesn't necessarily even need to happen. If they're withholding long enough, we can really start bringing them to the bathroom on an interval, and getting them to at least try to capture that moment where they are going to the bathroom while they're on the potty. But again, there'd just be a couple of things we'd want to evaluate for your child first.
One of my favorite things in talking to autism experts, in the autism community and among parents, there is this great fear that what if we aren't able to potty train our child, and we all have these nightmares about one of the first things that was said to me as a parent, once my son was diagnosed, and somebody was trying to make me feel better, and they were saying to me, oh, I have a friend and her child has autism and he's doing great. And I was like, really? Tell me about him. What's he like? Oh, well, he's 15. He's not potty trained yet. And I had nightmares about that, right? I was just like, oh, and I think a lot of autism parents have this great, great fear. But I love hearing experts talk about it, because you guys are kind of amazing in your attitude towards it, that you really have cracked the code on potty training, that when it's done properly, and you guys all love the Fox and Azrin method because you know that it works, that really you can have great success with potty training. And I have yet to hear of a single child that they were not able to potty train. Some take longer than others, but that pretty much everybody across the board, I don't want to say everybody because if there's a medical issue, that can make it harder, but pretty much everybody gets potty trained, and it's not this big loop-de-loop. So I appreciate you giving us some of those precursors to know when it's time, but I hope that everybody takes a deep breath and realizes that this is very, 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 very doable for kiddos.
Absolutely.
And I loved your assurance. You were like, well, and we can do that. I just love that attitude. So I'm going to move on to the next question. They write, my son is 11 and he has a lot of issues. Recently, my sisters suggested I get him looked at for Asperger's, which I looked up, and it doesn't even exist anymore. Can an 11-year-old get diagnosed with autism? I saw that Amy Schumer's husband got diagnosed. He's a chef. Maybe I don't know what autism is. What should I be looking for in an 11-year-old?
Well, there's a lot of things to unpack in this question, right?
Yeah.
So the fact that 11-year-old absolutely can be diagnosed, that is something that I want to assure, anyone. Honestly, anybody can be diagnosed if they meet the diagnostic criteria for autism. And the reality is, no, you don't need to have somebody assessed for Asperger's. Asperger's is just a kind of another form of autism that we've kind of now integrated in the new DSM-5 criteria. It's all within the autism spectrum kind of umbrella at this point. But previously, Asperger's, I think what this person would have been referring to would have been that their child kind of meets criteria for being high-functioning individual. And so when we talk about that, when we talk about the domains that an individual that's 11 years old that hasn't yet been diagnosed, I'm sure that this child probably has a lot of prerequisite skills, probably has language, probably has a lot of these adaptive skill sets that we'd probably expect about an 11-year-old to have. But it wouldn't be surprising that if this individual does kind of meet the criteria for autism, that maybe they're demonstrating some deficits in areas like their social responsivity, their understanding of areas like emotion, some of their executive functioning process. Maybe they're just a lot really disorganized. They could be experiencing some of the other things that kind of come along with having autism. Maybe they're depressed because they're struggling socially. So there's a lot of reasons that maybe this individual should get that diagnosis, because then people like CARD and our therapist team here and supervisors here can develop a program that would be appropriate for this individual, that would meet them where they are. to start everybody with, a program that's highly intensive with regard to language, but we could actually evaluate the domains that this child is specifically struggling within, and then see what we could do in terms of a treatment plan for them.
So you mentioned a couple of different things to be looking for, that if they're struggling socially, if they're struggling with, you were saying really, really disorganized and not being able to keep things together. Because one of the things this mom was saying, like what should I be looking for? It is this whole, they call it a spectrum, because there is a spectrum of people, and people can have different symptoms. I love the saying, when you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism, right? So it's kind of hard to pin down, but I always wonder why, when you get to this point where somebody else is saying, maybe you should have your child looked at for, and let's imagine that it was, that they said tonsillitis, or that they said maybe you should have your child looked at for shin splints, right? Hopefully we're all getting our kids to a pediatrician on a semi-regular basis for well checks. I just don't know what the harm is in asking, right? Because, excuse me, it doesn't mean that your child's going to be labeled forever to ask. And the truth is, as you were saying, if you are at someplace like CARD, they can help your child to overcome whatever their deficits are, no matter what they classify it as. So my question is, why not get it checked out to be sure? What do you think about that?
Just on that topic, I think that absolutely get it checked out. And it is a bummer. And even, this parent brought up Amy Schumer, and Amy Schumer has kind of drawn a lot of tension recently with regard to kind of bringing up how, it's that stigma that her and her husband are trying to kind of fight against. It's too bad that there is a stigma attached to the autism diagnosis, because in this child's case in particular, they could really benefit from services like what we can provide at CARD, but any ABA services from any provider. Doesn't need to be a CARD, just that these individuals have access to treatment. And the sad part is that even an individual that is operating decent in a number of domains where maybe that they haven't needed that diagnostic evaluation or that diagnosis previously, now that they're running into some of these challenges, the only other options for support is maybe like a once a week therapy session with a CBT psychotherapist, right? And that'd be great that they meet with a psychologist once a week, but we would get to maybe meet with that individual on a more regular basis, and really apply. And not saying that they wouldn't benefit from that CBT, but man, it would be great to even collaborate with that professional, that other professional, and then apply a lot of what maybe the cognitive behavioral therapist is recommending for that individual in a setting where our therapist can go to the mall, can go to potentially the school with that individual, and really work on some of these goals in the environments in which they need to be learned. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that they brought up, and you brought up, Amy Schumer and her husband. Man, we are all loving on Amy Schumer right now. The things that she has been saying, I was saying last week that she and her husband could have decided to keep this very quiet, and they didn't have to come forward and say anything at all. He is a successful chef. They are happily married and have a baby on the way. They did not need to, for their sakes, to come out and say, hey, by the way, here's what you should know about us. But the fact that they did, and that she has been so positive. I was saying to you, I think she's done more for the autism community and awareness in the last 2 weeks than probably the rest of us have done in the last 2 years, which, we've all been trying to make sure that people know that autism is not something to be feared. But Amy Schumer is saying, one of the things that I realized when my husband was diagnosed was that all of the traits that qualify him for being on the autism spectrum are the reasons why I fell in love with him. Oh my goodness. If I ever meet her, I'm going to hug her.
It's a great realization of her platform. It really is. And when you have the ability to reach that many people and kind of, change some things, it's great that she's utilizing her platform for that.
Absolutely. Really wonderful. But definitely for this mom, get your child looked at. Do that without fear. knowing that, like anything else, if they see that your child has a deficit in something, that even if it's a social deficit, there are things that can help. And I love that you recommended doing ABA, but also having a cognitive behavior therapist when kids are older. Super, super great. Okay, moving on to the last question here. My daughter is 4. We are card clients and she's making great progress. My question is, how can I get my husband to learn what the therapists are doing? It's not that he doesn't care, he just doesn't know what to do, and when I try to teach him, he doesn't get it. And I'm gonna guess too that creates friction between mom and dad when mom's trying to train dad. So what do you recommend, Gabe?
A number of things. We have a parent support program. It's part of the card model. So not only do we have our clinics and the therapy that your child should attend, but optimally, obviously we require at least one parent, but it would be so great if both parents were attending all parent meetings. And I like to call them parent meetings because a lot of times they get, labeled as parent trainings, but yeah, in this situation, dad could probably benefit from a parent meeting where maybe we really worked on the behavior interventions that, we have currently in place for her daughter and really allow the BCBA on their team to be the one that articulates that information to dad, maybe models and demonstrates some of that information because mom's probably in the process of still learning as well. So it'd be great if both parents got to attend together. It could be an opportunity for them to really, become more aligned on the treatment for their daughter and really understanding what's happening there. And yeah, you're right. It would allow for mom to maybe not have to be in the position that she's in currently, which is disseminating all of that information to dad when she's trying to absorb it and understand it herself as well.
Yeah, when we found out about CARD, we found out from another family. They recommended CARD to us and really were our Eskimos coming to CARD. And one of the first things that the mom said was, you're going to have a clinic and you need to attend that clinic like it's the most important thing in your world. You're going to rearrange your entire life around going to that clinic. And she said, oh, and by the way, it's not just for you to go. Your husband has to get off of work to go. And she said, federal law provides for your employer has to let you out for it. I know none of us wants to do that. None of us wants to go to the employer and say, hey, once a month, I'm going to have to take this, part of this morning off for the next year to 2 to 3 to, it was 5 years in our case. Nobody wants to go to the employer and say that. But the truth is you're protected, that they cannot fire you over that. They cannot pass you up for promotion over that. It's law. So know that. But I think back now about how much, because this mom said before we even started, and she said, this is what you have to do if you want to be successful. That was then what we did. And I met people along the way, I still meet parents who are like, yeah, but we just can't. And I know I would have said that, Gabe. I know I would have said that, but this mom said to me, no. Rearrange your life, prioritize that. You both need to be there. And even with both of us there, I learned things faster because I was at home more. I was working from home. And at a certain point, my husband came to me and said, I don't get it. Why does he do this for Peter? And why does he do this for this therapist? And he does it for you, but he doesn't do it for me. And I was not very generous at that point. I said to my husband, well, you better learn this. You better pay attention. You better get on the bandwagon. But we had a great supervisor who said to me, you need to not be there some of the times so that dad is the only person, because I'm such a strong personality that I would always jump in. And she said, you need to be unavailable. You need to go shopping or something. But I think back all the time, Gabe, on that and think, my husband and my son are so close. They have such a good relationship, and it's because he learned how to do what the therapist did. So I appreciate that you're telling them that they both should go to these clinics, that it's important.
And ultimately, even if for whatever reason there's some sort of additional barriers, reach out to your supervisor. See what the supervisor can do in terms of accommodating schedules. Maybe we can create additional time that's outside of the working time. It can be challenging, and maybe there's some times where dad can get off work a little bit early, and that supervisor can be available for parent training in the evening. I can't make promises for any particular supervisor, and it ultimately comes down to just that old saying, hey, my mom always said all you can do is ask.
That's right.
And so where there's a will, there's a way, and if your husband is interested and cares, then just ask and see what kind of accommodations can be made.
Absolutely. Don't give up on your husband. Pull him into this, because it will make a difference. Gabe, you've been fabulous. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. And for those of you who are in a place where CARD is starting to come to, maybe you'll get to meet Gabe in your travels. And we'll look forward to having you back again on the show, Gabe.
Sounds good, Shannon.
All right, you take care.
Yeah, you too.
Bye-bye. Wonderful, wonderful, our expert for the day. I'm going to hang up there. And we are going to take a break. I'm looking at the time. Oh, yeah, we're late to talk to Bonnie. I'm just late today. So we're going to take a break, and then we're going to be back with Bonnie Yates, special education attorney. Stick with us.
When Maddie was diagnosed, I'll be honest, I was very ignorant on what autism was. I knew that autism was basically something that hit boys at the age of 2 to 3 and shut down. And with Maddie, she was doing all the same signs and symptoms of a typical child with autism spectrum disorder.
Stand up.
I was thinking that we might be moving somewhere so that people could assist us either in the house or us going to see our daughter, because she was shutting down to a point that she wouldn't even recognize you being there by putting your hand in her face and yelling her name.
She didn't even acknowledge us coming into the room. She had barely any eye contact. She didn't interact with her sisters. She didn't really do anything. She just basically lined up her toys, and that was about it. With 8 volunteers, including my husband and I'm the team leader, and so I do all the curriculum and get everything ready each week.
Jana was downstairs until 11 o'clock at night working on curriculum, going through 2 different textbooks.
Look, who's that?
And then we, as a group, meet on Monday nights, and we would go through what the curriculum was from Jana. And a lot of times we would go, well, how exactly do you do that? How do you sit her at the table and do this trial-based? Yeah! What skills has done for us, it's taken that away from Jana trying to figure out the curriculum for one. She can go down, or even our laptop, and she can sit down, and through all these questions, it comes up with the different programs.
At least for me, it was a relief off my shoulders. I was worried that I might be missing a curriculum that maybe she needs to know, where the skills, they have every possible thing your child needs to know from 0 to 7. They have a program for that.
What noise is this?
Good job! Every program that we did with her, I knew it was specific for what she needed to learn. Because before skills, it was a lot of, okay, well, is that really age appropriate for a 2-year-old? You know, because it's not generalized. It's anywhere from 0 to 7. This is what your child needs to know in most manuals you'll find. But for this, okay, yep, she should be learning this. And no, she's not 4 yet. She doesn't need to know that yet.
We are so fortunate that Jana was able to attend a conference put on by CARD that opened the door for skills, and that there's no looking back for us.
We started using the program in November, and it seemed like by January something just clicked, and she has completely kind of came out of her fog that she was in for quite a while.
I have never read a documented case on any child that has not benefited anything from applied behavior analysis, and now with this new skills and being, you know, like the E version of ABA, I can't imagine that it doing anything harmful to their child. It's nothing but exponential growth for us.
To see her now, it just blows us away. I mean, we call her our little miracle child, because in 7 months' time, she's just blossomed into this normal, functioning child.
She is developing roundly. She is socializing. She's playing with her peers. She's learning from her peers. It's very joyous.
Maddie, can you tell me what you see outside? No. Snow?
If you're even thinking about doing it, do it. Because the absolute worst thing you can do is do nothing at all. And even if you use this program and it's just a single mom or a single dad working in the evenings with their child, this program is going to benefit them. It's going to show you where they are, it's going to show you where they need to go, and it's going to show you what skills and how to get there. It is an online book on how to help recover your child.
Parent to parent, you might be asking yourself, why does my child stim? Well, first of all, let's talk about what stimming is. Stimming is a slang term for self-stimulatory behavior, which is kind of a misnomer anyway, because a lot of the times when our children engage in these kinds of behaviors, they're not to stimulate themselves. Sometimes they're to soothe themselves. So first of all, we want to get rid of the notion that it's to stimulate themselves. But they do these behaviors because there's something about it that feels good. And that's the main thing that we need to know as parents. It's not some random behavior. There's something about it that's giving the child a paycheck. And once we get an idea of what that might be, we need to find a behavior that can take that behavior's place and start to reinforce that. We want to pick something that's more socially acceptable. So if, for instance, the child is doing a lot of hand flapping because they like seeing their blurred fingers, then we can find something else for them to focus on, maybe a toy that does blurred colors, so for a period of time they'll focus on that. The main thing to remember, though, is that there is a reason for these behaviors. There's something about it that feels good to the child. And once we know that, we can begin to change it. There's a phrase that's being used in the autism community called stimming. Welcome back. So apparently I messed up, and I guess we don't have Bonnie today, and that's my bad. But it gives us a little bit more time to talk about our mindfulness moment. So earlier today, the question of the day was, what's the one, if you could change one thing that would change your life for the better, you know, what one thing would you do? And hopefully you guys came up with a myriad of different things, but one of the things that we can do, excuse me, is change the way we think about something or someone, including ourselves. There have been lots of studies done about this, that there is this phenomenon that what you think and what you say to yourself and how you speak to yourself affects how you carry yourself, and it affects what you do. If you've ever seen on Facebook, there's all those different things that you can click on the different videos and watch something. I love to watch all the animal videos, right? But there's an amazing series, and I don't know what it's called, but a photographer had just random people, and they took pictures of the people, right? And then, so she'd take the picture first, and then she would say to whoever the person is, you know, you're absolutely beautiful, and then take another picture, and then there's the pictures side by side. It's fascinating because they take the first picture, and you know, these people, they look like people, and then they take the second picture after they just have been told that they're beautiful, and the way their face aligns, they look beautiful. They absolutely do. Everyone looks beautiful in the pictures. And it just goes to show that whatever thought process is going on in our heads has an effect on everything about us, how we carry ourselves, how we hold ourselves, how our features align on our face. Like, you can't in 30 seconds change the features on your face, and yet a smile does, right? And not everybody smiled when they were told they were beautiful. Some people got very introspective, but they look more beautiful. So we do know that there is this phenomenon that what you think becomes what you say, becomes what you do, becomes your experience of the world. So it's important to erase stinking thinking. And this can be towards yourself or towards something that you're doing. It can be towards your child. It can be towards your child's progress. But if every day you tell yourself, I can't, then what you will find often, most often, is that you can't. If what you say to yourself every day is, I can, you will find you will be able to do more things. And studies have borne this out. So ask yourself, where is my stinking thinking? And if I could change that thinking to anything else, what would I change it to? And this isn't just a phenomenon for you, it's a phenomenon for the people around you. So for me, I have this wonderful child, and I want him to grow up and be confident. I want him to have a sense of himself. I want him to be able to have positive self-talk. And this is actually a lesson that is included in Skills for Autism, because it is that important. Have you ever been around someone, a kid or an adult, that they mess up and they go, oh, I always mess up, right? And they're instantly in this hunched over thing, and they're like, I'm so bad. I'm horrible at this, right? And to think, if that's what's coming out of their mouth, what's going on in their head? And you might just walk around for a day, take a baseline, and notice all the stuff that you say about yourself and what you're doing and the things around you. And think, boy, is that what I want to be on the endless tape in my head? I know that a lot of people scoff and laugh at affirmations. And I think, affirmations don't change the world. But if you could take an affirmation and truly begin to believe it, I think that does change your world. It changes the way in which you view your world. So it's got to be the right affirmation, and there's not a one-size-fits-all, right? But something that you can say to yourself that's positive. And by the way, we've been talking about this a lot in the last couple of weeks, but we were talking about it yesterday about modeling behavior for your kids, that they are watching us and learning from us. And if they hear us walk around, especially the girls, when they hear their moms talking self-talk and go, oh, I'm so fat, or I look fat in this, right? They take that on and begin to look at themselves that way, right? And we do this with boys too. It's not just the girls. So important for them to see us modeling behavior. I know it feels weird. Because none of us want to be bragging on ourselves, right? But it's okay to feel good about things that you do. And it's okay to allow yourself to make mistakes and not berate yourself for it, right? In front of your children. When you do something and go, oh, boy, I didn't get that right, but at least I'm trying. I'm told that we do have Bonnie. So I want to finish this up, but positive self-talk is a form of mindfulness. Bringing yourself to the present and talking to yourself in a way that is positive. And it's best when this is going on in your head all the time, but especially when you're modeling it for your kids, to talk out loud to yourself in a positive way and teach them to do that. Then, watch how the world changes and your perception of the world, and everyone else's perception of you changes. It is a fascinating little experiment. Positive self-talk, great way to be mindful in a positive way. All right, should we take a break? Do I need to call Bonnie? What would you like? Bonnie's there. Do we have good enough sound though, Traven, to go right to her? All right, we are going to take a short break so that I can get better sound. Stick with us. We are going to have Bonnie Yates, and just coming up in a minute. Stick with us.
Hi, Lisa Ackerman back with your Talk of Facts, the autism journey questions and answers that you need to help your child make the progress they need. I'm here to talk to you about one really important item. A lot of people ask me the question, well, Lisa, I want to see this specialist in another state. How do I do that? I don't own a jet. I don't have the ability to fly without great pain and travel. Not a problem. We know how to get this done. So I actually encourage families, even though in travel can be a tremendous hardship getting a child with autism through security, through the plane, and in the journey to where they need to go. We have a whole white paper on TACA about how to travel with special needs kids. So it can be done. So travel, we know that can be expensive. Not everyone has an unlimited supply of cash for air flights. We love and work with this group called miracleflights.org. They're fantastic. They will fly you and your child, so one parent, one adult, anywhere in the United States, one time a year. Also in the TACA document are places to stay. So often you will have people in your life that love and support your family and don't know exactly how to help. Ask them to gift you their travel or their rewards cards or coupons for hotel, rental car. That's a great way to be able to get maybe a hotel room that has a refrigerator or a microwave and that's close to a Whole Foods, so you don't have that added cost of going out to dinner, especially if your kid has a lot of allergies. It's important to note that there's not a pediatrician or a specialist by every Starbucks in the United States. Close does not always equal best. So I bring up the travel point so you know that travel is possible, number one, and often it's really going to help you get down the road faster for your kid and getting the answers you need from the specialist that knows what to do. So don't be afraid to travel.
Here we are, we're back live. Hang on to that thought, Bonnie. We do have Bonnie Yates. Aren't you guys excited? Bonnie Yates, for those of you who don't know, is a special education attorney, and she's amazing. We've got the top of your head, Bonnie. If you're able to, there we go, there you are. Fabulous. And Bonnie works with the law firm Hirji and Chow. And Bonnie, maybe if you could take a second and tell us a little bit about Hirji and Chow.
Hirji and Chow is a 6-attorney firm of lawyers located in Culver City, California. And we do special education, higher education, disability discrimination, regional center stuff, and maybe a little bit of everything else that, you know, is education related that we can help people with.
And they're amazing, everybody. You need to know that Hirji and Chow is amazing, and part of the reason why they're amazing is because they have Bonnie Yates there.
Wow.
So
there's, you know, I mean, I was sadly reading the newspaper article about Michael Avenetti's fall from grace, and I was thinking about what a terrible taste that leaves in my mouth when people are exposed to that, as this is like how lawyers respond to the privilege of being given a license to practice law. And I will say, there are a really lot of good people in the education law field. They are doing the work because they came to it because some family member of theirs had special needs. And you know, there are a lot of committed good people out there, people that do things like Social Security disability, help people apply for IHSS services, people that help other, you know, families do estate planning for their kids with special needs. So I just want to sort of put in a little bit of a plug for the fact that, you know, in this field, I do think that people really do care, and I do think that people want good outcomes for clients. And, you know, I mean, we kind of suffer with you in a way. I went to an IEP on Monday that was just so crummy, and I just left, and I just thought, like, oh, you know, like another family going to their IEP and being told, no, the district aid is great. You don't need, you know, a non-public agency aid in there, and they think their kids are regressing, and they don't have enough money to put them in private school, and it's just, you know, it's heartbreaking, but we care and we try within the limits of the system, because, you know, it's really hard what parents of disabled children have to do, and we know that any small adjustment that makes things slightly less stressful and slightly more positive probably pays bigger dividends for, you know, our client population than, you know, the celebrity A-list people or something. Anyway, I think I'm supposed to give a disclaimer.
Yes,
and the disclaimer is that we're talking to you about your rights. We are licensed in California. ID is a federal statute. So we provide answers under state and federal law, but they're general. It's not equivalent to giving you legal advice, which if you have a specific problem and you're in Southern California, we can help you with that, and you need that. You know, you should try to get somebody to focus on your particular problem. And we do offer a complimentary consultation for people in Southern California because, you know, we do feel like we can give people a lot of information in an hour, and they will then take it back out into the world with them, if nothing else. So I think that's the disclaimer.
Okay. Now, we have a bunch of questions, Bonnie, because it is IEP season, as you well know.
It certainly is.
Okay, so the first question is, how do you even get an IEP? My 5-year-old has a diagnosis of ASD, and the school is telling me he doesn't get an IEP because he went to a private preschool and he didn't need an aide. They say that they will observe him, and if there is an issue, we can ask for an IEP. I don't think that's how it works. And she says, we live in New Jersey.
Okay, well, let's pretend you lived in California and I'll answer the question that way. It's probably similar. A lot of the kids that we deal with already had an IEP from preschool. It sounds as if this family didn't do that. Maybe they had ABA services in preschool. Well, they're saying they didn't need an aide. It sounds as if their child was enrolled in preschool, at some point during the preschool years got an ASD diagnosis, but never secured an IEP. So now they're being told stuff that's incorrect. The stuff that they're being told is that because they didn't need an aide in preschool, they don't have a disability that has an educational impact. Well, that's just not true. They could have had an aide in preschool and sat in the corner the whole time and said nothing and learned nothing, but caused very little problem and didn't get, you know, very much attention. But anyway, this person needs to start at the very beginning. They need to write a letter to the district and say, my child has a diagnosis of autism. Under state and federal law, you have a duty to, you know, perform an assessment to see if he needs special education and related services because of his autism. You know, please send me an assessment plan immediately. And then after they do the assessment, if the child is found eligible, parent will have the opportunity to raise what are called child find claims, meaning claims that relate to the district's failure to make the child eligible upon entry to what I'm assuming is kindergarten. But I think if you have a letter like that in writing, delivered to the right person, it's very dangerous of them to ignore that. And their reason is wrong, and they do have to assess. But over and over and over and over, districts are telling parents, we don't assess for that. Go to regional center. We don't assess for that. Go to a medical doctor. The threshold for assessment is very low. If there's a suspicion of having a disability, the district has to assess. They don't like that. It makes too much work for them. Oh, well, that's the law. If you don't like the law, don't break the law, change the law.
There you go. Okay, great advice. Moving on to the next question. My 13-year-old says the special education teacher hit him. There is no mark and no witness. The aide was helping another student in the bathroom. I don't know what to think. My son is not a reliable witness as he has fabricated things in the past, but I tend to believe him this time. He is clearly agitated when I take him to school and begs to stay home. He had an accident in his pants the other day. I suspect to get out of going. What do I do? My gut says to move him, but he would have to go to a school across town. His younger brother goes to the school he is at now, and getting them both to school on time would be impossible.
Was the question, did the question say the aide, the parent suspects the aide hit him?
No, the teacher.
Teacher,
and
okay.
She says the aide was in the bathroom with another student, so there's no witness.
Well, this is a very hard question because it's a real problem and parent is thin on proof. I think for starters, parent needs to write a letter, a polite letter saying, this is what was said by my son. I'm not saying it's true, but he's behaviorally regressed since then. I'm very concerned. We need to call an IEP meeting to have a check-in about what's going on. If he's having behavior problems that are leading to adults getting frustrated with him, we need to discuss this collaboratively as a team. You know, please schedule the meeting immediately. I mean, it sounds like something's going on.
Yeah.
But, you know, she's not going to be able to prove it, and she's going to alienate the teacher. So I think if you have the IEP meeting, you talk about the behaviors, the teacher knows she's being watched. I'd try that for a little while before you try moving him so close to the end of the year. If his behavior gets worse, you also need to ask for a functional behavior assessment, because maybe it's unrelated, but if his behavior has started to deteriorate suddenly, they have a duty to address that.
Absolutely. Okay. Next question. My daughter is being terrorized by a student in her class. She has autism and an IEP, and so does the boy who is terrorizing her. I have gone to a support group with the boy's mother, and she has told me this. She is one of those moms that keeps her lawyer on speed dial, so the school is afraid of her. This boy calls my daughter names, talks loudly about her bottom during PE. He tells her she smells funny and that she makes him sick. He says this loudly and often. I have talked to the teacher and the principal, and they tell me they are dealing with it and that they can't tell me what they are doing because they can't talk to me about other students. But it continues to happen, and I'm watching my daughter, who has always loved school, start to hate school. I should say this is all happening in a gen ed class. They are both part of an inclusion program.
Okay, well, this situation does happen, and it's very difficult because you've got the school trying to balance the special education rights of two children. And if the parent's perception is that the school district is afraid of the other mom because the other mom has an attorney that is having ongoing involvement with things, that would tend to lead to the district, unfortunately, being intimidated and uncomfortable and not knowing what to do. So, and I see this happens a lot, you know, so the kid is sort of engaging in bullying behaviors, but you know, the district is afraid to intervene. I think this mom has to do sort of like what I said before. She has to write a polite letter explaining what's going on, explaining that she doesn't blame the other child. She understands he has a disability, but this is still hurting her daughter. And so she needs an IEP meeting to address what's going to be done, because the kids can't stay in the same class. Somebody's going to have to move. And somebody needs to do something soon because her daughter's getting, you know, hurt every day by this kid, and it can't go on. And, you know, unfortunately, that's the kind of situation where if the other side has a lawyer, it's going to be difficult for you to represent yourself. You're going to need a lawyer too. Anyway, that's a very tough situation, and parents are always surprised when the district is sort of passive and doesn't intervene. I think it's because they are honestly perplexed and don't know how to manage this situation, because both kids have legal protection. So I think you just got to initiate the discussion, because, you know, and document everything that's happening, because at a certain point, that level of disruption becomes interfering of her ability to concentrate and pay attention and be comfortable at school, and that then starts to look like a denial of faith.
Yeah. And I totally agree, Bonnie. Sometimes as parents, we forget, you know, you have a discussion with somebody in the hallway and you feel like you've done what you need to do, but you need to put everything in writing and document, like you said. You know, it's that thing of writing later, as per the conversation that you and I just had in the hallway, and now it's in writing.
You know, lawyers have a general rule that everything is put in writing. And that's not a bad rule for you know, parents with kids with disabilities either. There are special exceptions to putting things in writing. Like sometimes if we want to tell an expert something, but we don't want it to be subpoenaable, and their records are subpoenaable before a due process hearing, we will purposely tell them the information in person or over the telephone. But what I'm saying to all of you is that's the exception and not the rule. When you're dealing with a school district and you have issues relating to an IEP or to a free appropriate public education, you should always be documenting and writing. An email's very easy, and everybody has email now, so it's not like you have to write a formal letter, but these things have to be documented. And you know, something very interesting too is parents write a lot of letters to the school district about concerns they have. When we request the district records, we don't get any of those emails. The district never provides those. So it's important not only for you to write the emails, but for you to be able to access them afterwards, because they will tell the story in a way that we could never understand from just reading the records. District descriptions of what the student is like or what is going on with the student are so incomplete and so misleading, and it continues to amaze me. I went to an IEP the other day for a student, the one that I said was really depressing, not the student, the IEP. And when I got there, I learned that this student has great academic strengths and he's ahead academically. I would not have known that from anything that I read about him in the material supplied by the district. So we have to create our own evidence. That doesn't mean we're making stuff up, but every time the district writes something down, it's a piece of evidence that they can use in a due process case. We need our own documentation.
Okay, well, I always think back to, I don't know whether it was you or somebody in your office, Bonnie, who said to me, document everything in case, you know, because you're gonna need it for one thing or the other. Act like you're going to write a book in 10 years, and you're going to want to piece it back together and not have anybody be able to sue you. I still have the emails because somebody in your office said that to me. I was like, oh, okay, you know, in case I need to write a book. So document everything, you guys. Okay, next question. What determines if my child is eligible for extended school year?
Okay, well, extended school year is something which most kids with autism should have as part of their IEP, but extended school year can be afforded to anybody. What extended school year is it's summertime services that are appropriate for students if they regress during the summer, and it takes them a long time in the fall to recoup their skills. So there's no standard test for ESY services. It's not like, okay, he regressed and it took 3 weeks to get him back to normal. Okay, he regressed and took a month. But if it starts to being much longer than a month, I would just say, reasonably speaking, that's regression that's too long and too difficult. And so the student should be entitled to extended school year services so that he doesn't regress to that degree and take that long to recoup the skills while everybody else is moving forward in terms of learning. So what I hear a lot is there's no ESY program here, so you don't get ESY services, and that's a misnomer. General education classes, it is true, are unavailable in the summer. But if you read the law on what an extended school year service is, it doesn't have to be a classroom. It could be a service like a reading program, or it could be tutoring, or it could be occupational therapy or speech therapy. So if somebody says to you, you know, he's not eligible because we don't have a classroom here in the summer for general ed kids, that's the wrong standard. The standard is regression recoupment ratio.
Okay. Next question. What happens if my child doesn't meet one of his IEP goals? Do they just roll it over to the next year, or is it possible I can use this to get different services? I don't feel like my son is making progress and they don't seem concerned.
I don't know how many goals the student had, you know, so it's a little hard to make sense of the question fully, because if you have 7 IEP goals and you meet 6 of them, that's going to be less a reason for concern than if you have 3 IEP goals and you don't meet 2 of them. The analysis of the goals gets made several different ways. So I'll just talk about it for a little bit. When you're at your IEP, a common error that is made is they have to say where the student is currently. So they have to have a baseline. But a lot of the time, if you read the baseline, it's not measurable. So if the baseline is not determined accurately, then when you go to measure goal progress, it won't be accurate. The goal itself has to be something which somebody in another state, they could read the goal without any, context cues from, like, a lot of the time at an IEP, people say, well, what this means is X, or we do it like this, and I say, no. It can't be inferred. It has to be obvious from the four corners of the document what the skill is how, and what the percentages of accuracy are, and how many times you're going to test it to see whether the student meets it at the agreed upon percentage of accuracy. And if a year after the goal is written, he can meet the goal at the agreed upon percentage of accuracy, he's met the goal. Now, when people don't meet goals, districts do all kinds of funky stuff. Sometimes they discontinue them without writing a new goal to address the area of need. Sometimes they just carry over the same goal into the next school year. And the problem with that is we have IEPs that we get where the goals are just carried over year to year. They're not working, students not meeting them, and yet nothing is revised. So one goal is not a hill to die on, but if you have a larger problem with the goals not being met or the goals not being measurable, that's definitely something that you need to address at your IEP meeting.
Okay. And then last question, because we're running out of time. What does it mean that my IEP is locked? I didn't sign because I didn't want to read, because I wanted to read through it. They had a problem with the printer, and I agreed to get the copy the next day. I read through it over the weekend, and there are errors I'm not comfortable leaving in. They are telling me it's locked, and if I want changes, I have to have a whole other meeting and an amendment. I didn't sign it. How can it be locked?
Okay. I'm suspecting that this person is in Los Angeles Unified School District. Maybe they are not, but LAUSD has a whole host of excuses that they use to manipulate parents because of the computer program that they use to write IEPs, which is called Welligent. So Welligent is like something that is like a fillable form that they use to complete their IEPs. And I think it has, I haven't really ever played with it, but I suspect the way it works is, like, if you do Section A, it may be hard to go back and redo Section A if you're in Section B. And then when you get to the end of the IEP meeting, they must hit some, like, save button or something, and then the IEP is quote-unquote locked. I will answer this question, and the parent is in the right and not the district. So we get documents from LAUSD that are stamped draft all over them. That's being given to us as a final document. That is not a final document. That's a draft. We also are in IEPs where they say things like, Welligent won't let me write this, and I basically say, I'm kind of snarky about it because it's just annoying. Like, hey, I know we're in the era of the self-driving car and everything, but your computer program cannot override a federal or state, right, educational right that a person has. So, solve your computer problems. So I think what this parent needs to do, she does not have to have another IEP to make the changes. That's absurd. She does not have to have an amendment. She does need to write the district a letter and tell them, I don't know what you need to do to unlock your IEP, but you're behaving illegally, and if this isn't fixed in 1 week, I'm going to file a compliance complaint with the state of California. And I think they'll fix it.
There you go. Well, we just rapid fired through those questions, Bonnie. You're kind of amazing.
It's all about caffeine.
Well, thank you for being with us. Tell us again about Heerji and Chow and where we can get a hold of you and them.
Heerji and Chow is in Culver City. Our phone number is 310-391-0330. Our website address is lawyer number 4, so lawyer4children.com. And we're boringly predictable. If you drop in, we'll be sitting in our little cubicles reading somebody's IEP and trying to make sense of it.
There you go. Well, we appreciate you, and we appreciate Heerji and Chow. Thank you so much for being with us. And as I was telling them, Next week, we're going on to a different format where we're going to be on an hour a day. And so this segment is going to air on Mondays, but not starting this next week. It'll be the week after, because it will be the week after. We have a special week this week with autism awareness. So look for the next episode of Bonnie's on the 8th of April. And Bonnie, thank you so much for being with us.
No problem. My pleasure. Everybody enjoy the weather.
Stay on the phone with me for a second, Bonnie, as we go to break, just so I can confirm something with you. But everybody else, stick with us. We're going to go to a commercial. When we come back, we are going to have Sasha Long, the founder and president of the Autism Helper. Stick with us.
Hard times lead to good choices. Many times you're going to find out that change is coming and it's not something that you like to see. Things sometimes just don't work. Sometimes you have to put your child in a new school. Sometimes you have to put them in a different classroom. Often you'll see this with perhaps special education versus regular education, or everyone's favorite, puberty. All bets are off then. However, these things happen when they need to happen. So making that hard choice is super, super scary. But when you open those doors to look at things that maybe you've never dreamed you would have to look at, you're going to find help that you never expected. There are a lot of people out there dealing with the same things that you are dealing with, and there is a level of help that you never even knew existed. So don't be afraid when it's time to look at the scary problems that you're having. When those things come up, when the aggression increases, when things are falling apart at home, when you're getting the calls from the schools, don't be afraid. Reach out. Find out what you need to do. You might need to look at new schools, new housing. You might need to access new levels of service. But I am telling you, you're going to see amazing things. There are children that, as they grow, do things with the help of others, very specialized support, that you never thought they could do. So once you do that and you meet the child where he or she is and you give them what they need, everybody can do better, and you're going to see amazing progress.
Hello, fellow activists. Last week, we talked about the first step to empowerment. Accept and embrace this challenge. Sometimes you have people that support you in your denial. Maybe it's your husband. Maybe it's your mother. When I expressed my concern to my pediatrician about Wyatt losing language around the age of 2, his response, maybe he's a late talker. He's a boy. Let's wait and see. But what about the temper tantrums? What about the fact that he put his head through the kitchen window? What about the bite marks and scratches all over my arms and chest? He said he's probably just frustrated that he can't express himself. Let's wait and see. But autism doesn't afford us that luxury. Of course, I was relieved with my pediatrician's reassurances, but I should have gone with my gut, because if I had, I could have gotten a diagnosis 2 years earlier. And I lost 2 valuable years that could have been spent on early intervention. And finally, when Wyatt was diagnosed, he was misdiagnosed. But of course, part of that was my problem too. I lied in a lot of those parent questionnaires so things looked better. I can't turn back the hands of time, but I can recommend that you face this challenge head on. Denial prevents us from walking a path we eventually will have to walk anyway. The sooner you face the truth, the sooner you can help your child. Until next time, take care of yourself and keep the faith.
Welcome back, everyone. We are really excited for the first time to welcome to the show the founder and president of the Autism Helper, Inc. Sasha Long is joining us right now. Sasha, so great to have you here.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
So, Sasha, you are a very interesting person because you were, correct me if I'm wrong, a special education teacher who then became a board certified behavior analyst.
Yes, so I've been on both sides of the table.
Well, I mean, this is really exciting to us. What we're starting to see is more and more of this blend of all the things you need to have, right?
Absolutely.
So I love a special education teacher who's now a board certified behavior analyst. Talk to me briefly about what made you decide to go become a BCBA.
You know, when I started teaching, I literally had no idea what to do. Like, I have vivid memories of being 22 years old and walking into my classroom and being like, oh my God, where do I start? Like, I had my undergrad special ed degree, but I didn't feel prepared. And my first few years teaching, I was just trying to figure out what to do and how to stay afloat. And it was, you know, the behavior challenges that I faced that I just didn't have enough knowledge about. And once I learned about ABA and then found a grad school program that was in Chicago, it started kind of to all click. I was like, this is what I need. And I was lucky enough to be able to go to school while I was still teaching. So I went at night, and then I could literally come back the next day to my classroom and use what I learned with my students. And I got to do my supervision hours in my classroom. So it was this like beautiful full circle of like, this all works together. And it was great. So it worked out really well.
Well, and now you're able to take everything that you know, having put these two things together, and you're a consultant and an international speaker, someone who can help other people put the pieces together. Because I find that a lot of times, I'm a former teacher, right? And the advice that teachers are given for in the classroom sometimes aren't practical, because they're coming from people who have never taught and never been in a classroom and don't know what it's like when you have 35 kids with snot running down their face doing 35 different things. You know, and you love each one of them, snot or no snot, and you want to do right by those individuals, but you're given a curriculum and a pace at which, you know, it makes it really hard. So I love that not only are you a speaker and available for those consultation services, but you've got a really amazing site, the Autism Helper, Inc. Talk to our viewers a little bit about what they can find when they go to your website.
So I started blogging about, I think 7 or 8 years ago now, and now we have grown to a team of 8 bloggers. So we have myself plus an OT, an SLP, a parent, and then special education teachers from preschool all the way through high school. So we have a little bit for everyone. And my goal is really always to bring value. Like, I want strategies that are easy to understand and easy to implement, because parents and teachers are just too dang busy to try to understand something that's overly complicated, and we just want something that's real world applicable that we can use right away. So we share a lot of photos, a lot of videos. You know, I'm very visual, like many learners on the spectrum, so I always like to see it, not read about it. And kind of just anecdotes and strategies from all of our workplaces, how these concepts work and look like in the real world.
Well, and I love how short and direct your videos are on your website, that a teacher can go there and listen to something. I was listening to one of your videos this morning while I was getting my makeup on, and you were talking about visual schedules and about and just schedules in general in a classroom. And you're funny. And you're engaging, because you were talking about how sometimes you go into a teacher's classroom and they say, oh, I don't really use schedules. And I thought it was great because you said, oh, no, I can see that. Because I'm sure when you go to a conference, you want to sit there and have no idea of when you're going to have lunch, what topics are going to be covered, and if you're ever going to get to go home. I'm sure you're happy with that, right?
You're very comfortable in that meeting.
Right. So sure, let's do that to you, and then let's do that to your kids. And then you go about talking about why kids need a schedule and why they need a visual schedule, and why it's the kind thing to do to let people know what's coming up and when it's coming up. So I just thought that was great, and just how you were funny and engaging, and the information was so clear that I didn't have to already have a degree in psychology to understand what you were saying, because
absolutely. And then, you know, when you talk about the ABA jargon, I live for that, because as much as I love my field, love being a behavior analyst, I hate that no one understands what we're talking about. So explaining it with analogies from my own life, I find really helps people understand. Like, these are just strategies about human behavior that we can all apply to how we function.
Well, it's really wonderful. And you also have a podcast. Talk about the podcast.
Yes, we launched our podcast in December. I myself, I think, was late to the gate, like the podcast game in general. I only started listening to podcasts recently and then realized how much I was missing out, because I'm all about efficiency. So if I can learn something while driving to work or do my laundry, I'm all about it. So I loved the idea of just having another way for people to consume our content. Like if you want to read about it, go to the blog. If you want to watch the videos, watch the videos. And if you want to listen on your commute, you have that option. So we just had our 20th episode last week. We launched one a week on Mondays, and it's kind of been a mix of interviews and then kind of action ideas, just a specific strategy or motivation a little bit that you can apply to your classroom or home setting.
Well, wonderful. And so where do we find the podcast?
We are on any podcast platform that you have. We're on, Apple Podcasts. We're on Google Play, Spotify, all of those. You just search the Autism Helper podcast.
Wonderful. And is it a free download for the? Yeah. So, and I also want to point out that when people go onto your website, there's just tons of free information and things that will help you. I think from anybody's perspective, whether it's a teacher or whether it is a parent or if it's somebody who's just doing ABA, what a wonderful thing for them to go and hear it through a teacher's perspective. Because I honestly think, I've said it many times here on the show that I think it's wonderful that insurance is now covering ABA. What a fabulous, fabulous thing that is. But if we don't train our teachers and how to do this, we are dead in the water.
Yes.
I don't even know. It makes me crazy to think about what would happen if we don't do that. And it isn't just the special education teachers.
Oh, yeah.
I'm always singing this. All the teachers and the lady who works the lunch line and the bus drivers, but especially the general education teachers, because what I see all too often are kiddos who had the benefit of good ABA, so they're doing really well. So now they're included in Gen Ed, but the Gen Ed teacher doesn't know how to seal the deal, and so now the kid has behavior, and then they try to put the kid back in special education. But otherwise, it would have worked. If we had just given that teacher tools and training, it would have worked. So I'm all about the Gen Ed teachers getting this training too. So what's your end game? Ms. Sasha, what do you want to do? Because you are changing the world and giving people the opportunity to change their classroom. What do you want to do?
That is a huge question.
It is a huge question.
I want to do all the things. Time is my problem. Usually,
You're young. Time is on your side.
I love consulting. I'd love to continue doing that, and I really love doing trainings. My summer, I have two little kids, so I do have to limit how much I travel, but I'm doing a bunch of traveling this summer, doing professional developments, and I love that because I love, getting all of the special ed people who feel isolated on a daily basis in one room in a training that's specific to them. So I love doing that and just keep growing and see where this all takes me. If you would have told me 10 years ago when I was a special ed teacher that this is what I'd be doing full time, I would not have believed you. But this just kind of kept going and going and growing. So it's been great.
Well, I think it's awesome. We want to encourage everybody to go to theautismhelper.com. Check everything out there, but then make sure that you look for the podcast. I'm going to be on the podcast in a couple of weeks. And honestly, whether you're a teacher or a parent, if you are in a school district that needs this, and let's face it, they all do, talk to them about having Sasha come and do. Most schools have money to train teachers at least once or twice a year, if not every week.
They really do.
They do. And sometimes you have to get it on the agenda in advance, but ask for them to bring Sasha to speak to your school and to do a training and in service with your teachers, and who knows, it could happen. And be persistent, because that's what it takes, right?
I always tell teachers just ask, because I often do get hired through teacher recommendation and a teacher approaching their admin. And I actually this week had a group of parents on the PTA approach their admin about bringing me in, which like made my life. That's so amazing. But just ask, like all they can say is no, and they might say yes. So how would it hurt? And like you said, there is funding for training. Some school districts have specific funding for special ed training that they don't know how to utilize. And administrators do want their teachers to gain value from the training. So they want it to be something that teachers want to go to.
Absolutely. So speak up, speak loudly, and ask for this very special training from this very unique person. I love that you have this particular background and that you are so eloquent in putting it to good use. It's a really wonderful thing. I applaud you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you so much for being with us, and I look forward to being on your podcast.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Thanks so much.
All right, you take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. What a remarkable young woman. You know, we try whenever we can to have an autism in the classroom moment, because I'm a former classroom teacher. I taught college, but then I went into the classroom and taught 7th grade through 11th grade for several years, and it's a rough place. The classroom is a rough place. Teachers don't have enough resources. I was at a Project Y school, which here in California means that you're under construction. They're changing from an old building, taking out things that are potentially toxic, and parts of the building are sectioned off, and you have to walk around a construction site to be able to get to a restroom. Good times, right? And it's not just hard for the teachers, that's hard for the students too. There were several times that I would start my class in my classroom and then have to leave my classroom because the construction noise was too loud, or in one case there was stuff raining down from the ceiling that I wasn't going to put my kids or myself at risk. And then, you know, we have to relocate our classroom. It can be a tough time. And when you're trying to look at students as individuals, because that's what we should be doing with all of our kids. And some of my kids in my classroom when I was teaching high school and junior high had IEPs. Some of them had 504 plans, right? But you really want to be able to look at every student as an individual. It can be really, really tough. So having those resources of having help and support. I mentioned on the show either yesterday or last week that even before I had my son, I went to one of these in-services where they were going to talk about dealing with problem behavior in the classroom. And I certainly had students, the first classroom I inherited, I started right after 9/11. And the teacher, you know, in California, classes had started around the 1st of September. So there was this older male teacher in this very diverse population of students. And on 9/11, on that morning, they started to hear up and down the hallway that something was going on. They allowed TVs to come into the classroom so that they could see what was happening. Class was then dismissed and the students were sent home, and the teacher never came back. He said, "Done, peace, out, I'm out. Like if the world's gonna come to an end, this is not where I wanna be," and never ever came back for those students. And so for a month and a half, longer than that, almost 2 months, they had substitute after substitute after substitute. And I think we were all changed by 9/11. And after 9/11, I said, where am I needed the most? And I was told we need teachers in the classroom. And I had a certificate so that I could go into a classroom and teach. And so I went into that classroom. And there were kids that were hurting because they felt like they'd been abandoned, and took one look at me, white woman in their classroom, and they felt like this woman's going to leave us just like that older white man did. And so I had to prove to them that I was going to stay, but I also had to get control really quickly of the classroom. And almost like the second week in, there just happened to be somebody doing an in-service about challenging behavior in the classroom. And it really was life-changing for me. What I didn't know at the time was it was the principles of ABA. And they were talking about the different needs in a classroom, and how some kids, and I'd been teaching for a lot of years by this point. I'd been a college professor, but dealing with these very specific issues, you know, there weren't things that you would have seen in a college classroom. But the thing I remember the most was they talked about kids who need attention and how they'll do anything to get attention, good or bad, and how you have to get there beforehand and give them attention beforehand. And that sometimes it means giving them a job and building them up and making the words that they hear in their head be different than the ones that they're hearing. One of the things that I'm most proud of is that I think on the third day that I was teaching, one of my students threw a battery at my head, and it just missed me. Like, I recall hearing the whiz of the battery as it went past my hair, and it hit the blackboard behind me and cracked it because he threw it that hard. And it was meant to intimidate me and to get me to leave. It didn't work. I stayed, and that student, not that year, but the following year, his work had gotten so much better that I nominated him for, and he won Student of the Month. And it is amazing how if you give a teacher, could I have done that without having the tools that I got from that in-service? I don't know. I don't honestly know. It was so important to learn, oh, that this behavior that's happening, it's happening for a bunch of reasons that don't have to do with me, but I have an ability to change what I'm doing to help them to access the curriculum. That we can step over this and actually get down to work and have these kids feel better about themselves, and I get to actually do my job of teaching instead of dealing with challenging behavior. That was exciting to me, and I'm sure it's exciting to most teachers. So anyway, I'm so thrilled that we had Sasha on. I hope that people will check out her website because we do need to give teachers tools. It's a rough place. I will say to you too that if you if your child is already in school, regardless of what the placement is, they could be in a special education setting, they could be part-time in special ed and part-time in gen ed, they could be all the way in gen ed, you could be in a junior high setting where they have multiple teachers, or high school setting, same thing. If you have good teachers, there's one way that I know for sure that you can tell a good teacher, and that's if you give them information, what do they do with it? Because a good teacher has never stopped learning and never wants to stop learning. So if you give them information, they will get excited about it. We had a teacher a couple of years ago who had a very specific handwriting exercise that they wanted their kiddos to do in class, and sent out the instructions to us with a study and said, we want you, here's why I'm asking your students to do this, and it's based on this study and why handwriting, we've all gotten into tablets and things, and it's not as effective, and it crosses the brain in a different way to do handwriting. Now, I looked at this, I read the research, and I was like, oh, this is really good for me to know, because handwriting, not my kid's forte, right? So I was like, great, this is wonderful. I do want my student to do this, but I also wanted the teacher to understand that that was not going to be as easy for him as a lot of other things were going to be for him. And so I sent her back a study and said, I want to work with you on this. Here's a study about why handwriting is really difficult for kiddos who are on the autism spectrum, and that their pencil will actually be off the paper twice as long as students who don't, and so it's going to take them twice as long to write it, and then they're going to have to access their brain in a different way, and it's going to take longer. So I said, I want to work with you. Here's my study. I'm still going to make him do it, but we need to do it, in this way, with this accommodation and this amount of time. And that teacher got super excited and was like, thank you for reading my study, and I read your study, and yes, let's, can we work it this way? And so we negotiated it, and everybody was happy in the end. And I knew that was a good teacher, because a good teacher wants information. They're excited about learning, right? Otherwise, why would they want to be a teacher, right? So I want to say to you that there might be some teacher appreciation thing coming up. Give your teacher information, and you can do it in lots of different ways. You can share a study like I did about something that's relevant to your child. You can share a book. that you like, whether it's fiction or nonfiction about autism. And it can be a thing where you gift the book to the teacher for their classroom, or you can say, here's a book that I'm lending you that I think is particularly fabulous, that I want you to know X, Y, or Z about. But the other thing that you can do, we talked earlier about IBT, you can give an IBT training to your teacher. If you go to ibehavioraltraining.com, and you can let them know that you want to do this as a gift for a teacher. And you can pick which one you want them to do. There are 3 different categories of trainings for IBT. There are trainings that are just for professionals, that they get different credits for, right? And it's that RBT, some of it is that RBT that I was talking about, and the BCAT training. But then there are trainings that are just for teachers, and by the way, there are trainings that are just for parents. And the jargon level is different in each one of them, because there is jargon that's specific to teachers, right? That isn't necessarily the stuff that's for the professionals. And for the parents, you know, we get a little overwhelmed by all the education jargon and all the psychology and all the ABA jargon. So you can give them whatever you want from whatever category. But one of the ones I recommend highly as a beginning one, because what a great place to start, is to give teachers, there's a training on how to set up your classroom for you know, the best learning, but there's also one about being able to do safety drills. What a fabulous thing. That gives great advice for teachers about what they should know about practicing for safety drills with kiddos on the autism spectrum, like preparing them for the bell being loud, preparing them for being potentially in the dark, preparing them for being in a small space, you know, getting them ready for following the directions when the rules change, right? Could there be better money spent than to give that gift for your teacher? And keep in mind, that helps your student, and it helps all the other students in their classroom, but it also helps the students for every year after they get that training. What a fabulous gift to give a teacher. And you know, the truth is, I have given this to many people, and some of them have been, oh my gosh, this is so fabulous. Actually, they were all that way. This is so fabulous. But some of them took the time to do the training, and if you ask an IBT, there is a way that you can see if they watched it or not. Right? And other teachers were like, this is awesome, I'm gonna watch this, and they still haven't, and it's years later. I know, time gets away from you, but I'm just saying, teachers love information. Good teachers, good teachers. So what a way to see. Now, we've got 2 minutes left, and I want to talk to you guys about a couple of different things. So next week, starting on Monday, we are going to have a show that airs at 10 o'clock on Monday from 10 to 11. Great guest. You're going to love it. Then on Tuesday, we are going to do a live segment because it's Autism Awareness Day, and you know I always like to read the UN statement for the year. And we're also hoping, fingers crossed, that we're going to be able to get to a live event where Autism Works Now, a group of individuals of different abilities, work, and they're going to be selling pies from their Glorious Pies pie truck. And we're going to try to be on location one way or the other with them on Tuesday. Somewhere. I might be here with them there, or I might be there with them. I don't know yet, but that's what we're trying to do for Tuesday. We'll have a special show. It's Autism Awareness Day. And then, of course, on Wednesday, we normally would have Ask Dr. Doreen, but we have Evelyn Kung, who is going to be with us answering your questions. And then on Thursday, we've got a great show planned for you. And then on Friday, it will be Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. So that is the progression for next week. All right? So it'll be from 10 to 11 in the morning Pacific time, Monday through Friday, podcasting to iTunes and all the other places that you can get us. And we're going to be looking to hear from you guys about how you like the new format. So we will be on Facebook Live and YouTube Live and our channel as well. So be with us. We're launching this new thing, celebrating as we move into year 9. 9 years. Whoo! Where has the time gone? And still with the same opening with me with dark brown hair and a lot of pounds thinner. What can I say? Now it's the anniversary opener. In any case, I will see you back here next Monday. And until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now.